Let me tell you about the single greatest strategic failure in growth. It's something called the rebuild fallacy. It's this belief that when your sales just stop, you've got to tear down your entire website and start over from scratch. And you know what it ignores? A simple neurological fact. Your market isn't gone, they're just bored. So what if I told you that the reason your once unstoppable campaign completely flatlined has almost nothing to do with your offer and everything to do with, say, a single image or a 3-word headline that your audience has simply seen one too many times? You know, this belief, it's the common enemy of every single marketer, founder, and growth leader out there. It's that horrible sinking feeling when you look at the dashboard and all the numbers are turning red. All that momentum you worked so hard to build, gone. And the immediate panicked reaction is almost always the same. This isn't working anymore. We need to scrap it all. New website, new offer, maybe a total rebrand. We just assume the entire machine is broken. But that right there, that's the fallacy. And it's an incredibly expensive. And here's where the diagnosis just goes completely off the rails.
We feel the pain of the whole campaign failing, so we assume the whole campaign is the problem, right? We see the final result, no sales, and we work backward from this place of total panic. But the data, when you really look at it, consistently shows that in almost every single case, 95% of the failure, 95% of that drop-off is coming from one single specific bottleneck. And this brings us to the most important part of this whole thing. The solution isn't some massive, months-long overhaul. The solution is surgical. It's all about finding that tiny 5% sliver of the user's journey, the ad creative, the headline, the very first sentence on your landing page that's causing this catastrophic failure downstream. You see, the key isn't to rebuild the entire house. It's to find and fix the one leaky pipe that's hidden in the wall.
So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to totally dismantle the rebuild fallacy. Then, we'll walk through the 72-hour reset architecture. After that, we'll dive deep into the psychology of neural adaptation. I'll lay out a surgical blueprint you can actually use, and we'll wrap up with the core idea behind all of this: how to be always fresh and always seen.
All right, let's jump right in. Section 1, the rebuild fallacy, and exactly why our instinct to just start over from scratch is such a massive, massive waste of time and money.
This question right here is the fundamental reframe of this entire system. See, we tend to internalize campaign failure. We think, oh, my product isn't good enough, or the market's moved on. But what if the problem has absolutely nothing to do with rejection and everything to do with a predictable, biological thing that happens in all of our brains? The simple truth is that the human brain is an efficiency machine. It is hardwired to ignore anything familiar just to save energy. Your campaign didn't fail, it just became invisible.
And here, you can see the two choices laid out with, well, brutal clarity. On the left, you've got the rebuild path. We're talking months of meetings, redesigns, development, costing tens of thousands of dollars, all focused on overhauling the entire funnel, only to find out you were solving a problem you didn't even have. Now look at the right, the reset. 72 hours, minimal cost because you're only changing a few key things, and a laser focus on that entry point hook. The result? You solve the actual neurological cause of the failure. One is brute force, the other is just diagnostic elegance. So what's the actual science behind all this? It's a concept called neural adaptation. And this principle is at the absolute heart of why good campaigns die. Think about it. Your brain is bombarded with millions of bits of information every single second. To cope, it creates shortcuts. It learns to filter out things it's seen before that didn't pose a threat or offer a new reward. Your ad, after just a few times being seen, gets sorted into the seen it, ignore it category. It becomes neurological wallpaper. It's not a judgment on your ad's quality, it's just a biological reality of how attention works. Okay, now that we get that the problem is biological, let's look at the solution. The 72-hour reset architecture. This is our blueprint for performing what they call a surgical graft onto your existing proven funnel. I really love this analogy because it just simplifies the entire philosophy. Your proven offer, your back-end systems, your email sequences, that's the machine. It's a finely tuned engine that works just fine. The hook, your ads, your headlines, that's the fuel. When the car stops running, you don't throw away the engine and build a new one from scratch, you just change the fuel. This little shift in thinking is the key to longevity and, frankly, to efficient scale. And here it is, the exact timed blueprint. It's a 3-day sprint designed for maximum impact. The first 24 hours, that's pure diagnostics, the bottleneck triage. The next 24 hours are for strategy, the psychographic pivot. And the final 24 hours are for rapid execution, the stimulus injection.
Each stage builds on the last, moving smoothly from analysis to strategy to action. Let's break each one down. Stage 1 is all about becoming a data detective, and you have to be absolutely ruthless here and isolate the one variable that's causing the most damage. Where is the single biggest leak? Just look at your data. If your click-through rate has totally fallen through the floor, it's simple. The hook is stale. People aren't even getting past the front door. But if your CTR is high and your time on page is just a few seconds, you've got a message mismatch. The ad promised one thing and the page delivered something else entirely. The whole point of this phase is to focus 100% of your energy not on what could be wrong, but on what the data proves is wrong. So once you've diagnosed the bottleneck, it's time for the psychographic pivot. Now notice, we are not changing the product or the offer. We are changing the angle of the story we're telling. We shift the mental anchor. So for example, if you've been selling your project management software on the practical benefits of efficiency, you pivot to an emotional identity-based angle, like become the most organized, respected leader on your team. This creates something called a schema violation. Think about it like this. If you always see a friend wearing a suit, and then one day they show up in a punk rock t-shirt, you're forced to kind of reevaluate what you thought you knew about them. That's a schema violation. It shatters their expectation and forces them to see a familiar offer as completely new. And finally, we have the stimulus injection. This is the tactical part, and it's all about speed and leverage. We are not reshooting entire videos, we are changing only the first 3 seconds. We're not redesigning entire web pages, we're changing only the hero section at the very top. We'll often use jarring, maybe even ugly or pattern-interrupting visuals, something so different it just can't be ignored. This does 2 critical things. It bypasses the user's neural adaptation, and it signals to the platform's algorithm that this is new content, which often gives you this massive revival of reach and traffic. So we've seen the what and the how. Now, let's dive into the deep psychology that makes this whole system fire on all cylinders. This is the science behind the strategy. This slide points to a specific piece of hardware in your brain called the reticular activating system, or RAS. The easiest way to think of it is as the gatekeeper of your consciousness. It's the bouncer at the nightclub of your mind, deciding what information gets in and what stays outside. Through repetition, your campaign got put on the do not admit list. The reset with its radically new stimulus is like showing up in a completely new disguise. The RAS doesn't recognize it and lets it right past the velvet rope, giving your message access to conscious attention all over again. But you know, getting attention is only half the battle. We also have to disarm their skepticism. And this is where we can leverage the fresh start effect. It's that powerful psychology behind New Year's resolutions or that feeling of a clean slate on a Monday morning. By presenting your offer with a totally new narrative, you provide a psychological reset for the customer. You're basically giving them a New Year's Day for your product, letting them see it without all the baggage of their previous impressions. Any indifference they built up is just wiped away, and they're open to hearing you out as if it's the very first time. And when you combine all these elements, you're not just hoping for attention, you are physiologically compelling it through what's known as the orienting response. It's that involuntary, instinctual reaction to any sudden or new change in our environment. It's a dog's ears perking up at a strange sound. It's you turning your head at a sudden noise. You are literally using neuroscience to force the brain to stop scrolling, orient itself towards your message, and ask, wait, what is this? Okay, we've covered the science. Now, let's turn this theory into a repeatable framework with your surgical application blueprint. This is how you actually do it. Really, it boils down to this clear 3-step process. Step 1, execute the point of failure audit. Dig into your analytics and find the single metric that is killing your ROI. Be precise. Step 2, identify the opposite angle. Look at your current messaging and just go to the opposite psychographic pole. If you've been logical and practical, pivot to emotional and aspirational. If you've been selling safety, pivot to selling adventure. Create the biggest contrast you possibly can. And step 3, this is the most important one for speed, apply the first frame rule. Change only the head of the funnel, the first 3 seconds of the ad, the headline on the page. That's it. Maximum impact, minimum effort. And this is the ultimate goal. This isn't about some one-off trick. It's about developing a core skill. The ability to calmly look at a failing campaign on a Friday afternoon, run this exact blueprint, and see positive ROI by Monday morning? Well, that's a durable, powerful competitive advantage in any market. It basically makes you anti-fragile. Which brings us to our 5th and final section. This is the core insight, the philosophical takeaway that really powers this entire system. Always fresh, always seen. This right here illustrates the core paradigm shift we're talking about.
We're often taught to see our market as this static, fixed pool of people that we just need to drain. But that's not how it works. The market is a dynamic, flowing stream of attention, of desire, of belief. It's constantly moving. The funnel rejuvenation system is so effective because it's built on this reality. It's not about building a dam, it's about learning how to navigate the current by constantly adapting and injecting novelty. So let's just end with this thought. We have to abandon the metaphor of pushing people through some rigid mechanical funnel. The new goal is to pull them toward the value you've created. And in a world of infinite noise and biological filters designed to ignore you, the only way to create that pull is to master the art and science of being always fresh enough to be seen.